Minnesota Vikings season is over. What happened? We're going to talk all about it. We're going to talk about how all the issues that the Vikings had throughout the year just came home to roost in one night and just amplified itself tenfold on the biggest stage of the Minnesota Vikings season. And then we're going to spin it forward, and we're going to talk a little bit about free agency. We're going to talk about the draft, and we're going to give a mini primer on what to expect over the course of the next, 8-9 months until we get to see another Vikings game. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner, he's producer Dave. And we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Welcome to the show. We're going to have a lot of fun here tonight. And Dave, you're mad, and I'm going to push your buttons tonight. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, so let's not beat around the bush. Dave told me earlier that we received a compliment for being pretty level-headed on the post-game show, and whoever gave that, thank you. That was very kind. But it was intentional. Emotions are completely warranted and valid about losing that kind of football game, seeing your season end. But the whole point of our network is to just be as honest as possible. We were all pissed. We were all upset. You know, my professional life is covering the Minnesota Vikings, and it's the team that I've loved more than anything my entire life, except for maybe the Florida Gators. But when it comes to looking at things from an overall perspective, from analytical, from realistic, from logical, there were so many different elements here, Dave, that really factored into why the Vikings ended up losing this game. And I think one of the big things for me, and I've been talking about it, I talked about it on Meat and Potatoes and Purple Daily earlier today. I talked about it on the post-game show. I'm not in a position where I want to say that, hey, this is 100% now JJ McCarthy's team. I think you need to separate the emotion from the loss and then look back at it. And I think the Vikings are going to do just that because you have a very large sample size of Sam Darnold playing great football. And you have a much smaller sample size of him playing poor football. So what does that mean? How are you parsing that out? Now, one of the interesting things is it's like when you were in college and you have your final and it's worth 30% of your grade. Well, that's the wild card game. And then you have your midterm, which is worth 20% of your grade. That's week 18. And then the rest of it is the body of the regular season. So the bigger games are going to be weighted. But kind of looking back on it, I would put about 50 to 60% of the blame on Sam Darnold. I can't put a lot of it on him. And I think that's a very fair number because it was not all Darnold. Darnold was not always put in proper positions to succeed. Darnold he made plenty of mistakes, and he deserves a lot of criticism for the performances that he had the last 2 weeks. And this is not absolving him of any of that. But we have to look at things from a realistic perspective. Darnold was not the cause of the Vikings loss. He was a big contributor. There were many causes of the Vikings loss on Monday night against the Rams. The biggest one to me that really snowballed was the talent gap and the talent void in certain areas. You can start with Christian Darrisaw. We didn't really feel the loss of Christian Darrisaw until the Lions game. And then we felt it really bad against the Rams. I'm not saying that Cam Robinson was bad, but he was. One of the big things that I noticed looking at the splits with Darrisaw and without Darrisaw, Blake Brandel cratered without Christian Darrisaw next to him. And some of that you can attribute to, oh, you have Christian Darrisaw next to you, your job becomes easier. And it absolutely does. But how does it become easier? Why is it easier? And does replacing him completely eliminate the things that make it easier? And I think the answer is yes. It does make it a lot harder for you to do your job. And Blake Brandel had 6 pressures in the first 6 games when Darrisaw played in full. 31 pressures throughout the rest of the regular season. And then I believe it was 8 allowed against the Rams. So 39 pressures in the final 11 games allowed. It was only 5. I got that number wrong? Okay. 36 pressures in the final 11 games. So why would that happen? Why would that be a factor? Well, Darrisaw is so good, he can chip real quick, like put a hand, and then all of a sudden kick out and take care of his guy. He also is going to be able to handle his guy on the island, so you don't even have to think about Darrisaw letting a guy on the inside. What was Cam Robinson's biggest fault? He let guys beat him inside. So when you look at some of those angles and elements, now you can start to kind of build up, okay, now we're seeing why the offensive line was really struggling. Plus, all the credit in the world to the Rams. They devised a tremendous game plan. They used a lot of simulated pressures, which is that if you don't know what simulated pressure is, remember the Zimmer look where they had 2 linebackers in the A gap and those guys just drop out? That's simulated. It looks like pressure is coming, but they don't send anybody. They did a lot of that. They did a lot of stunts, twists, and then they were really creative with how they blitzed and got pressure on Darnold, and it just beat the hell out of the offensive line. It destroyed
him. Emulated Aaron Donald's approach, not Aaron Donald.
Aaron Glenn.
Aaron Glenn's approach from the week before.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much the same. And what is surprising to me is why didn't KOC recognize that and adapt and change?
Yeah, I was really surprised that there was a lack of adjustments. I will give him a little bit of a break. I think Kevin O'Connell deserves a lot of criticism for this game for a lot of different reasons. But a lot of the stuff that he was calling was open. Darnold just couldn't get there. And I think he couldn't get there for a few reasons. And I think within those reasons, Dave, we can say, hey, maybe you should have made adjustments and maybe you should have called some more shallower concepts. But there was one where they had trips to the right and then they had Jordan Addison on a double move. He was wide ass open against cover 2. So that honey hole, he was wide open and you could probably beat that deep safety. And that's a touchdown. Thank you to Evil Hope for the super chat. He says if KOC loses his next playoff game, he needs to go. We'll talk about that. Chris Gates says there were guys running free in the secondary all night, and that's true. And that's why it's hard for me to completely blame Kevin O'Connell, because even when the stuff wasn't working, it could have worked because it was open. Now you come down to the point where Darnold's got to hit it. So then you have to ask yourself, why isn't Darnold hitting it? Partially, it was due to, Odie, you found the corn chip. Good boy. It was partially due to the fact that the offensive line wasn't blocking. Darnold was not seeing. I don't think he was seeing ghosts. I think he was less confident in what he was seeing. And I think that's.
I thought it was evaporating dollars in front of his eyes, is what he was saying.
Dave, you did it again. You moved your hands, and now it's moving with you.
Yes, I saw that.
That's funny because Dave did the same thing pre-show, and I thought it was hilarious. Look, it's a combination. Like Darnold, I don't think was comfortable with what he was seeing, and that's different from seeing ghosts. Seeing ghosts is like you're freaking out, and the whole concept of seeing ghosts was like an inside joke in the Jets locker room that just got caught on live television, and it's just an atrocious look. Now, Darnold struggled heavily in New York, so yeah, that's fine. my big thing here is there were so many different reasons why they weren't able to complete those passes down the field. It was missed throws from Darnold. He wasn't able to see it. He wasn't able to get to it because of the pressure. Like, it was just a compilation of things. And that's why this loss isn't on one thing, not on two things. This was every issue that the Vikings had throughout the year, their weaknesses, all of a sudden, were just compounded and got just, it just cratered. They cratered. The talent gap became too much. And the interior of the offensive line, my big thing with the interior offensive line, I was a big Ed Ingram over Dalton Risner guy. I still am. I think the decision to bench Risner was bad. I will stand by that. I don't care what the PFF grade said. I don't think the PFF does a great job with offensive line. I know a lot of people believe the same thing. I don't think you can go into next season with either Ingram or Risner as the starting guard. You just can't. I think you could potentially do it with Brandel because there was a huge aspect of success at left guard with Brandel next to Christian Darrisaw, which is exactly what you would get next year. My big thing is you have to fix guard. I don't understand why people are begging for Garrett Bradbury to be replaced. One, are you going to be able to find a Garrett Bradbury replacement? No, I don't believe you will. I think Bradbury is objectively fine. He's not great. He's solid. He's just a solid player. Like, and even if you want to go by PFF metrics, like, just solid. He's not an abject disaster. But if you improve the guards next to him, which everybody knows that we need to, you have a starting caliber center at $5.25 million average annual value. That's a pretty good deal. I'll take that. Drew Dahlman is the name that people are going to be bringing up, but he's basically Garrett Bradbury. He's just a tiny bit younger and he's going to be way more expensive. Do you really want Garrett Bradbury to be replaced by like another Garrett Bradbury for more money? I'd love to be able to upgrade center. I just don't see that as a smart use of resources considering what we have. We need to replace those two guard spots. They need to be at least average football players. And quite frankly, I don't think we got average. We needed more. And when you look at some of the teams that are in the playoffs, outside of the Rams, because the Rams, I don't think have a good offensive line. They have good guards. They don't have good offensive line. The Eagles and Lions arguably have the two best offensive lines in football. The Bills have a really good offensive line. The Ravens have patchworked it's now okay. It was bad early on. It's now okay. That Daniel Falele's been relatively fine at guard over the last few weeks. Roger Rosengarten, the second-round rookie, has stepped in at right tackle and been good. Ronnie Stanley has played 17 games for the first time in his career, which, Dave, I can't believe that that's a thing. But these teams, they all have really good trench play. And my big thing going into the year was I thought Kwesi Ofemenso was trying to moneyball the interior of the offensive line. Why was he trying to moneyball it? Because I think, one, he thought he could find a competitive advantage. And two, Dave, he didn't have money to address everything. They decided to fix edge rusher, get a linebacker, get a corner, and get Darnold. It's objectively, I don't think you could say that any of those moves were bad. They were all great. They worked. Even Shaq Griffin at $4 million played some solid football this year. Like, he's not a long-term guy. I probably don't want to bring him back unless it's at like a little bit less money. But he was solid. And you have to make those kind of risks when you have so much dead cap, which ended up being about $72 million. $72 million. That's a lot. That's a lot of money that you don't have access to. So now that when you don't have access to it, you have to find your own way to win. You have to find ways to win in the margins. They thought that they could do with interior offensive line, and for the most part, it worked. But when it mattered, they just weren't able to step up. So then now, okay, we have the money. Let's go fix it. And I'm intrigued to see what he does, how he goes about it. Is he going to want to prioritize, hey, Trey Smith, come play inside in Minnesota, Help us win a Super Bowl. You've already won a couple in Kansas City. Come show us how it's done from an offensive line perspective. And you have a phenomenal organization. You have money. You have resources. You have weapons. You have a quarterback. You have an offensive structure that's really, really good. I wanted the Vikings to take Trey Smith, but he had some medicals. I believe it was something like blood clots. It might have been a heart issue. It was something of that variety. That's why he fell to the 6th round. I thought he was like a 2nd or 3rd round kind of player. But medicals will have guys fall. Like, he's fine now. So what, like, does he go big game hunting? Does he try to sign like 2 guys for $10 million a piece to try and get like average? I'm curious as to how he's going to approach that, because he's never shown an aptitude to want to spend high quality assets other than the 59th overall pick, which you can argue or debate how high of a quality that asset is. But he tried. He absolutely tried. Too evil to hope. Bradbury's fine. I mean, I don't think he's great, but he's an average starting center making less than average starting center money. Considering all the other needs we have, if we upgrade both guard spots, he can stay at center for 1 more year. That's okay. And that's where the salary cap comes into play. You can't upgrade everything. And that's why I think you upgrade the guards and keep Bradbury.
Well, and that's the only point I agree with you on, that you upgrade the guards and keep Bradbury. If you can't replace them all, which I doubt you can. Now, when it comes to O-line play, I've about had it with Chris Cooper, our O-line's coach.
Explain.
There is enough good O-line coaches around the league that do a job of developing drafted linemen and utilize even vets and make good O-lines. Damn it, Dave's here in our chat. Detroit has by far the best O-line in the business. They're not the only ones. I think with a better O-line coach, you could raise some of these people. You could develop Ed Ingram into an all-around guard. You could develop Brandel into an all-around guard. But we haven't had that. And it's come down to, I think it's time to swap out Chris Cooper, in my opinion, and find a better O-line coach. Will they? I have no idea. But I've heard it floated, and I agree with it. And I've questioned it for a long time. I questioned it under Zimmer and his O-line coach. Other than Tony Sperano, it was rough. And that's the only way I think. We have the talent at offensive line is low across the board. I've lamented on that many, many times. But where you can make up for the lack of talent, because everybody, if you throw everybody in the same bucket, yeah, you're going to have a few that rise to the top and a few that drop to the bottom, and everybody else is in the middle. I think we're in the middle. But what you do with that middle is you give them the best coaching available. KOC is supposed to be the QB whisperer. He's gotten more out of Sam Darnold than anybody thought possible up until this last 2 weeks. Well, let's find an offensive line whisperer to pair with him to add to that. Somebody that can also double as a run game coordinator. Somebody that knows, hey, this is how I bring guys up to be the best they can be. And Chris Cooper's nice guy, does okay, but I don't think okay is good enough in this league. Okay gets you one and done. We were one and done. And I know people want to blame Sam for what all went wrong on Monday night. Sam was only part of the problem. The offensive line was part of the problem as well. Now, Sam holding the ball 7 seconds, yeah, you can't. No offensive lineman's going to be able to do that. But if an offensive line can give you 2.5 seconds in a clean pocket, yes, let's go for that. And I believe there's need for a change some way on the O-line, whether we get Trey Smith and pay him $25 million a year or whatever the price will be. It's going to be 22 to 25. And we pick up any other guys. By all means, let's start them with a good O-line coach that knows what he's doing. And I think Chris Cooper may be part of the problem why we've failed to develop guys over the years. Now, you can tell me, oh, Brian O'Neill's good. Well, yeah, Brian O'Neill's good. He was a tight end in college that moved over to tackle. Well, you got Christian Darrisaw. Christian Darrisaw got himself some, too, until he got injured. But we still don't have the whole picture, all five being studs or close to it, to where they're dominating. And we need something that can dominate on the O-line. And if Cooper hasn't done it in 3 years, KOC, this is part of your responsibility. You need to figure out how to do it. And part of that is, who have you got on your staff? Why has the line not functioned like we want? Right? And KOC's got to want him to do that as well, which I'm sure he does, and say, hey, you're just not hacking it. I'm looking someplace else. That's why.
Interesting.
I think Cooper, he's a nice guy. He, knows the Shanahan system well, the zone, but I think we need more power guys, more guys that, grew up loving the big round bellies and coaching them and making something of them. There are coaches out there. If it costs stealing it from somebody, steal them from somebody.
So I will say this at least. One, remember, he was a Mike Munchak disciple. So that was the idea of bringing him in. You weren't going to be able to get Munchak, so you brought in his assistant. It's hard for me to know, and I think you would know better than me, just because you know more on O-line than I do, what he's kind of responsible for and what he's not as far as growth, talent development. How much of it is they are just good or bad? How much is Cooper actually extracting from these guys? How much is he actually developing them? Because you could argue that Ed Ingram is all him. You could argue that a lot of Christian Darrisaw's development is because of Cooper, because Cooper got his hands on him when he was in his second year. So, and I would argue that Garrett Bradbury has never been better than with Cooper as far as like a well-rounded center. Now, you can take that with a grain of salt. How much is that worth? Because he's like bang average because of the limitations he has with his size. There's just not enough sand in the pants, but that's something. I'm curious to see what ends up happening with guys like Michael Juergens and Walter Rouse. Are those guys going to be able to be developed? What does that development look like? Because they are the second and third offensive linemen that the Minnesota Vikings have taken. I don't believe they took any offensive linemen in 2023. And they took those two guys in 2024. And they took just Ed Ingram in 2022. So now you have an opportunity for Cooper to really show some of his stuff as far as growth and development. What does that look like? Do they think Juergens can step up into one of those spots next year? I'm not saying they should, but I'm just kind of trying to talk through it and be like, oh, well, what could the plan be?
You hope with a developmental style coach that they can. And I don't see it. Yes, I'm not going to disagree that Bradbury had his best years so far under Cooper. That's without doubt, because Bradbury was so bad under Zimmer and his O-line coach. Like I said, once Tony Sperano left, left us, R.I.P. Tony. It was downhill ever since then. And it hadn't been great for 15 years anyways. But
yeah,
you need to find that developmental guy. Like I said, KOC's supposedly QB whisperer and has improved play of QBs. I think that's undisputed. from their baseline talent. We need to find an O-line coach that can do the same from their baseline talent, because I think we have some guys that are capable of developing into good players. Ed Ingram, he's got the strength, he's got the attitude. He just doesn't play or set right, or the one punch and then loses balance. That's coaching. Teach him a different way. Teach him to take steps differently. Teach him to punch differently, to set his hips differently. All that's coaching and development. And now I wish they could do it throughout the year. They cannot because of the Players Association, the workers agreement. But they can send them off with rules and recommend, hey, get with this guy over the offseason, work with him, sort of stuff. But during the season, they can sit there and work on it and say, hey, I graded you this during this game. You failed in this and this and this, and this is why. We're going to go fix that. And here, join me after practice. We're going to work on this and improve it. It's one of the things that, since we're dissecting, we're doing a autopsy on what went wrong. I think that's one of the things that we can improve.
I agree. I'm intrigued how they handle it. I'm intrigued about some of those elements. I want to kind of shift over to Kevin O'Connell here for a minute, because I do wonder what some of this lack of quick game stuff is. How much of it is due to the fact that they just didn't want to run quick game? How much of it is because Kevin O'Connell did not trust Sam Darnold to run quick game very much, because Darnold's best traits are throwing the more deeper concepts? How much is it that Darnold is just so good at running the deep concepts, they're willing to take the risks of throwing it deep? One of the things that really intrigued me about Kevin O'Connell, what he said, was that completions are negatives for defenses. And the more you have, the better off you are. Even if they're short completions matter. So that part is really interesting to me, how that all kind of compiles. Honestly, I'm not huge on how Kevin O'Connell called this game, but I will defend him a little bit in that the deeper concepts were working, Dave. They were working. And because they were working, it's hard to be like, hey, Kevin O'Connell was bad. Well, he had his issues. And I think those issues manifested themselves in a very negative way. But dang, Dave, there were some real opportunities against the Rams that they just were not able to hit.
Yeah, there was misses, without a doubt. Even though play was called right, receivers were open, there was opportunities. They were there, but there was also other stupid decisions. Why we're running when we're down 18. Hey, I understand. It looked like he threw up the surrender flag. Didn't want the Rams to run up the score even more. It's, lack of a quick game, as Purple Pessimist says. I don't know if it's lack of a quick game. I think it's more tailored to what the quarterback can do. Sam Darnold's good at the deep ball. He's not good at the intermediate. And he's obviously not good at the short /screens, because he was horrible on Sunday at that. Well, will somebody that throws very good intermediates, Kirk Cousins did, or J.J. McCarthy is known for, be an answer to that and a quicker release? J.J. McCarthy has a quick release versus wanting to take 7 seconds on a stupid play. That's ridiculous. But is KOC, we say go short game, go quick. And KOC says, yeah, but Sam's good at the long game. I like the long ball. We're going to throw the long ball. Is he doing it to the detriment of the team, or is KOC saying, I'm going the long ball because that's what he's good at? He's not good at the short game. If we do the short game, we're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we don't know what KOC was thinking. I wish we did.
Me too.
Other than the one little bleep that, hey, look for Justin Jefferson. If he isn't open, look for Jordan Addison. If he isn't open, throw the ball away.
Yeah.
Takes a massive sack. We're now 4th and 21.
So I will say, Mike Silver of the Athletic had an article come out about the game where apparently O'Connell on one play that ended up in a big sack told Darnold to look for Jefferson, look for Addison. If you don't like either one, throw it away. So
that's for Aaron. He's still taking rollouts. I'm taking that assets too.
Yeah.
But Silver,
it's hard, man. It's just, this whole thing is hard and it just stinks. But I will say this, just continue taking time, and then we will have a very reasoned discussion later on, probably after the Senior Bowl, about what's the best route for the Vikings. Is it Sam Darnold? Is it JJ McCarthy? Is it Sam Darnold with one more year and then you turn it over to McCarthy? Or we're going to have that discussion in a much more nuanced format coming up.
Sam
now
did
is not
win
the
14
time.
games for us.
Yeah. It's important to remember that we're not just judging him off of the last 2 games. You're judging him off of everything. That's how the Vikings are going to approach it too. So we're going to get the emotion completely out of it, let everything settle down, and then we're going to talk about it because I think it's very, very interesting. Now, what else is really interesting, Dave, is our friends at Underdog Fantasy. We love our friends at Underdog Fantasy, and they have a lot of fun games that you can play, and it's very simple. You just pick higher or lower on a stat total, and you do up to 8 different selections. Now, the key is you have to have at least 2 different teams, and then you can win up to 1,000 times your money. I hit on a 4-pick lineup with the Boise State against Penn State. I won nearly $100. It was great. It was a lot of fun, and it provided a little extra fun while watching the college football game. And you can do that with all kinds of sports. I love this weekend Jahmyr Gibbs over 0.5 touchdowns. He had 4 against the Minnesota Vikings. He's just been a touchdown machine without David Montgomery in the game. And I think he's going to continue that in the playoffs. And there's a really fun promo code called Split the Pot right now where you can get your share of a pot if your pick ends up hitting this weekend. Visit underdogfantasy.com. Find them on the App Store as well. And don't forget to register with my promo code FORNO, F-O-R-N-O, to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. One of the key things is has to be available in your state. Underdog is available in the majority of states across the country. And it is going to be something that you are going to want to play because it gives you a little extra juice for those games that, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily have a rooting interest. Give yourself a rooting interest. Play a lineup. Just pick 2. Go higher on the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdowns and then go higher on Jaden Daniels passing yards. Have some fun with it. Just remember, you have to be of a certain age in different states. 21 plus in all states. Some states you could be either 18 or 19, and terms do apply. All right, Dave, there's a couple things we got to talk about on the defensive side of the football. Let me tell you, I'm still confident on the defensive side of the football. They finished 5th in scoring defense, 2nd in rushing defense, 28th in pass defense, but that's a little skewed because of how successful they were at stopping the run and also in scoring defense. So they had some blowouts where there were a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. So like the first Packers game, Jordan Love threw for 390 yards. Well, they won. And they were up 28-0. What were the Packers supposed to do? Run the triple option? You know what I mean? So like, I don't really take a lot of stock into that aspect. But it was evident that the Vikings just have too much of a talent gap. And I don't think the defense was figured out, but I just think Brian Flores felt limited in how he could run the defense. And that ended up being the big factor. They're running all these complex stunts that take multiple seconds. Their standard pass rush is just 5 guys. They're not blitzing when they send 5. That's just what they do. They rush 5 defenders pretty much all the time. Now, if you had a really good interior pass rusher, could that modify? Well, they ran a lot of Bengal Hawk in 2023 where they dropped like Harrison Phillips a lot. They didn't run like any of that in 2024. So I do think that Brian Flores is finding ways to adapt and grow his defense based on his personnel. So if you get a dominating pass rusher on the inside, or maybe 2, then all of a sudden, hey, things change. Now you can have like somebody like Dallas Turner playing off the ball, and you can use him as a blitzer. You could do all kinds of creative things by stuffing him in an A gap. Like, that's where things get really fun. And when it comes to the Vikings, how are you going to be able to continue to grow? Well, you have to grow your personnel. The secondary is going to look completely different. I think Byron Murphy Jr. will stay. I think Cam Bynum is going to go because Cam Bynum is going to ask for too much money for what he provides. He is a good football player. And this is not to slander Cam Bynum. Very good football player. At the end of the day, is he a $17 million football player? Is he a $15 million football player? I don't think he is. I really don't. And that's not to say that he's bad. He's very good. But in a salary cap league, you have to be careful. You really do.
But we have space on the cap to pay this year. Thankfully.
Mm-hmm. We do. But you still have to be smart because we're probably going to upgrade both guard spots, look at running back again. I would bring back Aaron Jones under the condition that you bring in another guy. Because I think Aaron Jones is a good 1B. Find a 1A. Because I think Aaron Jones, you could bring him back for like, I don't know, $4 or $5 million. Probably going to be less than the 6 or 7 that they gave him this year. But you can give him a little bit of money and have him come back because he was very valuable for you. But you can't count on him to be the guy. Some talk about like Deion Walker and Walter Nolan in the chat. I'm going to tell you this. A lot of people are much lower on Deion Walker in the industry than you might think. I feel like Walker was hurt this year because his 2023 tape was way more explosive than what it was in 2024. I was really shocked at how stark the difference was. I have a mock draft coming up for A to Z Sports tomorrow. I recommend you go check that out. But I gave them Walter Nolan. Right now, he's my second overall player, and that might not change. He's great. He's incredibly explosive. And Dave, he's big. He's 6'3", 305, and he's built like a Mack truck. Like, there is not a wasted ounce of body weight on that man. And I do think that some of what he was asked to do at Ole Miss didn't necessarily maximize him consistently. They did a lot of stunts, a lot of slants. He didn't just get to line up over a guy and just beat his ass. And I think because he's good at stunts, I think that's going to translate to how Brian Flores is like to play forever. But I do believe that you can use him in a, hey, just go beat his ass kind of role. So I'm really intrigued to kind of see what manifests there. But I do think defensive tackle. Well, here's the interesting thing about defensive tackle. Talking with my friend Luke Brown on Locked On Vikings, he said something that really resonated with me. If you are like a pass rushing specialist on the interior, unless you were like elite, you're like a mid-round kind of guy. You don't want to take a specialist in the first round or even the second round. You want to take that guy later on. That guy better be good in run defense too. He better be like a well-rounded player, and that's what Walter Nolan is. Archetype-wise, I think you could kind of talk about him in the same stylistic perspective as what Jalen Carter is for the Eagles. Now, he's not Jalen Carter. Stylistically, what are you getting on an overall scale? That type of player, that archetype. And I don't think you need a nose tackle with this team because Harrison Phillips is in that role. And I'll be honest, he's grown a lot in that role as a two-gapping kind of guy. The run defense, the defensive line, like when they were trying to stop the run, was really good this year. Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery. I would expect Bullard to be back. Tillery, probably not. I think you probably replace him with free agency or draft pick. But there was a lot of ability with that front. They did a great job stopping the run. So I'm not worried about the run defense. But I would like one of those run defenders to also be a great pass rusher. And that's where a guy like Walter Nolan comes into play. I think the Vikings need that more than anything. I really, really do. And if they can get that, it's going to ease things on the coverage aspect. You're going to need to bring Byron Murphy Jr. back. Then I'd love for them to sign a guy like DJ Reed and just be like, hey, I know you're 29. We're going to give you like a 3-year deal. And then you'll be done at 32. But man, you saw him against Jefferson and Addison. That dude can just flat out cover. That's a good corner. I would love to have him on this football team. But the tough part is you're going to have to take risks in free agency. Guys maybe a little bit older, or a guy maybe only had one really good year and their team doesn't want to commit to him. Well, if their team doesn't want to commit to him, then you have to, those red flags do raise. So I think some of those aspects are at play. I want another linebacker. I want another 3-down linebacker next to Blake Cashman, and then use Ivan Pace as just a little like a rodent. I just want him to be annoying. I just want him just to be a pest. That's the word I'm looking for. Just be a pest. But I don't want him doing 3-down linebacker kind of duties. I want him to be Ivan Pace. And I think by having another 3-down linebacker, that can really help you elevate that. There are a lot of different things you can do with the back end, how the Vikings want to grow, how they want to evolve their defense. The biggest thing is you have to fix the talent gap. And I think they can do it. I really do. There are guys in free agency, just to the defensive line. One of Milton Williams from the Philadelphia Eagles, Oso Digizua, who is my personal favorite of the Dallas Cowboys, and Levi Onwuzurike, who I was huge on coming out of college from Detroit. One of those guys, that would be awesome. Raymond asked about Levi Drake Rodriguez. I think he's a work in progress kind of guy. I think personally, they want Levi Drake Rodriguez to be the next, to replace Harrison Phillips on the line. I think they want him in that role. That's my theory. We'll see. But I do really like his potential. I think Jalen Redmond's been really good. I think that he's going to be here for a while. And I think that he could be your Jerry Tillery replacement. I also think, maybe, just kind of talking through it, maybe Bullard gets replaced by like an Oso Digizua. Who knows? I'm intrigued to see what they do, but the talent gap is the number one thing that needs to be fixed. And I think because of that talent gap, you saw Brian Flores not want to try a lot of man coverage, which I think would have been the number one thing to try against Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, because he knew that they'd get smoked. And that's why I think
against Detroit.
Yeah. And
if he could play man, that would be different.
I think that's why the defense was what it was. They just knew that they were going to get smoked. So they didn't. They just kind of stayed status quo. You can like it or not. I didn't like it at all. I was very vocal about it. But you can't put yourself in failure either. You have to try and split that difference. You have to try and figure that out. So I'm intrigued. I don't know what they're going to end up doing, but the talent gap is the number one thing that needs to be fixed. You've got a talent gap at guard. You got a talent gap on the defensive line. You got a talent gap at corner. Fix those. You fix those going into the draft. Now all of a sudden, just draft a guy you really like. Oh, there's a receiver there. Draft him. Oh, it's a corner. Draft him. Oh, it's a defensive tackle. Draft him. Anything but offensive tackle. That's all I'm asking. No offensive tackles, please. I swear, if I see another mock draft sending the Vikings offensive tackle because they allowed a lot of pressure, I'm going to absolutely obliterate something. I saw one where they had the Vikings taking edge rusher on in the third round because the Vikings couldn't generate any pressure. I'm like, you didn't watch this team at all. They were one of the best teams generating pressure, and both their edge rushers made the Pro Bowl. And they've got a rookie who, by the way, one of my big things with like the edge rusher group, people are overreacting about Dallas Turner. They're overreacting, saying, "Oh, you only played 310 snaps." Boo-hoo. Rookies aren't supposed to play that many snaps, and if they do, it's because there was either a really big talent void, or they end up being great. Like Dallas Turner didn't get on the field because Van Ginkel was a second-team All-Pro and Jonathan Grenard almost was too, and they're both starting in the Pro Bowl. That's why he didn't play. We shouldn't be mad about that. He is not built for Pat Jones's role. He needs to bulk up. This offseason is going to be huge for him. Gain 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. Get up to 257. Get bulkier. Do that, and then I think we can see a lot of special things from Turner because he improved throughout the year. Less rookie mistakes. His head was on straight. That interception against the Seahawks, incredible play. I think that you are in a great spot with those guys. And I'm really excited about that potential. I think you fix interior of the defensive line, you fortify corner, and Chris makes a good point. Mekhi Blackman is coming off that torn ACL. He'll be back next year. Like, this team is in a really good spot. Well, projected to only have like $3.5 million of dead money, but that's before the likes of Aaron Jones, Byron Murphy Jr., and Harrison Smith.
All the void contracts hit. Yeah.
But if you extend Byron Murphy, you could end up saving cap space. If you give Aaron Jones another contract, you could save cap space. It's going to be interesting how everything plays out. And I think that this team is in a really good position right now, Dave. But it's everything from Monday boils down to they just had a lack of talent, and everything compiled off of that. The coaching, the performance, just everything. And it sucks. It still sucks today. We got on the phone and you were grumpy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not happy about it either, but I will address this because Purple Pessimist has put it in the comments a couple times. Trade McCarthy and Andrew Van Ginkel for Drake May. That is a really good idea in Madden. They're not going to trade Drake May. Drake May, everybody knows I said at the Purple Daily draft party that I would have given up my first round picks in 2024, 5, and 6 for Drake May. I loved him. I think he's going to be a star. And what he did with that, how little of talent that they had in New England, I think I have been vindicated so far. I still don't buy that that Bo Nix is real. Show me metrics that are substantially better than Russell Wilson, and we'll talk. Show me that you're not Mac Jones 2.0. Rookies deserve 3 years before we crown them or bury them. Drake May is on the right track. Bo Nix is on the right track, but I think that could be derailed very easily because there's too many limitations there. That's why, and Dallas Turner too. It's why we give rookies time. They need it. It's hard to come into the NFL and play. So fix the talent gap, figure out quarterback. And then if Brian Flores goes, I hope they promote Durante Jones or bring in Jared Mayo. Because I do think that you should try and keep some kind of continuity with this defense. I think Durante Jones has earned a promotion. I think that Jared Mayo, if you brought him in to be the DC, he'd run very similar things. And I think he would be a great defensive coordinator because he was a great defensive assistant in New England. So I'm really intrigued to kind of see what that looks like. In the offseason, though, we're going to have a lot of fun stuff. We are going to do a lot of draft content. We're going to have extra content. We're going to have, I'll probably start doing, unless Dave gets mad at me, little like short podcasts talking about prospects. When I watch a prospect, I'll just record like 5-10 minutes on them. As long as Dave doesn't want to shoot me, we're going to keep doing those. And then we're going to have some fun there. We're going to have a new, an extension of SKOL Search coming with a co-host, not named Dave. So that will be fun as well. And we are going to have a good old time talking about NFL draft prospects. My goal is to get 100 players graded like I do every year, because the draft is not my full-time job. Vikings are my full-time job. So I try to, I take these few months to really go hard, but I watch so much college football. I have a background on these guys. So I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited. This is going to be a fun offseason. It's a pivotal one for the Vikings, because this is where Kwesi really can put that stamp of what he wants, because there's so few limitations on him. They could restructure Jonathan Gennard and save like $12 to $14 million and give themselves another player. They can do that with Brian O'Neill. Like, they have some flexibility there too. So get excited. This Vikings team could be really, really good.
Let's hope. Let's hope the changes that are coming are good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to be our show. I'm going to address one thing really quick before we go. I know Mike Florio had a comment about Kevin O'Connell's contract situation, stating that he was upset that they didn't extend him after 2 years. The Vikings just don't extend their coaches until the final year of their deal. That's just kind of how they operate. So how much of that is true? I don't know. But I'm not going to be too worried about it until I'm given an opportunity, until I'm told I need to. So,
and Florio's been off this year, to say the least, on his reporting.
Yeah, Florio's an interesting guy. I'll defend him till the end of the earth, but I have questions. But that is our show. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. We appreciate everybody in the podcast feed too. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things. We would greatly appreciate it. And on top of that, please drop something in the comments. Let me know what you think the Vikings should do most this offseason. That's what I want to see. I would also like to see with a 5-star review on the podcast feed. That would be fun to be able to check out next week. Saturday, 2 bloggers will be back. But Thursday, that's what I was trying to say. Thursday, Sal will be back with Scolders and Spice talking about her trip to Glendale, Arizona, State Farm Stadium. She was live at the game. And we're going to have a lot more talking about your Minnesota Vikings. Other podcasts might slow down. Other podcasts might stop. This is when we amp up. We do more. And we're really excited to do that.
Yep.
Well, I am Tyler. He is Dave. Skol Vikings, everybody.
Skol Vikings. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. Skol, everyone!